Everyone wants more money, but most of us weren't taught how to create an abundant life. That's where the law of attraction, manifesting success stories show comes in. If you are ready to have more money, create more freedom, and experience more fun, turn the volume up. It's time to learn how to create the prosperity and life you have been dreaming of. Here's your host, Cassie Parks. Hello and welcome to this episode. Again, I am normally your host, Cassie Parks, but this week I'm turning it over to Kimberly Hite, future coach starting January 1 at Future Self University, which is really what we're becoming, because we help people step into their lives 5 years from now, build their money mindset that supports that. What I always say is I've never met anyone whose future self isn't abundant and isn't good with money, just because that's how you get to live that amazing life. It's part of it. So today I'm super excited to celebrate my Freedomversary, and Kimberly is here to interview me about that. Take it over, Kimberly.
Well, hello, Cassie. Thank you for this opportunity to interview you.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to dive right in, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
What does Freedomversary mean to you?
It is the anniversary of the day that I woke up and I no longer had to go to my corporate job, like ever again, right? It was a Saturday because it just happened that the first I worked through the first so I could have insurance for a whole month with only working one day. And, so the first was a Friday and the second was a Saturday. And even though it was a Saturday and I would not normally have to go back to work, it was that weekend of, oh, I don't have to go back on Monday. And so my Freedomversary is the anniversary of that. It's November 2nd. And this year, so if you're listening to this right when it comes out, yesterday was 8 years since I woke up and I did not have to go to my corporate job and I had manifested my freedom.
Awesome. Do you remember when you coined that phrase, Freedomversary?
I think it was the second year. So it was my second one. Because the first one, I was in the middle of writing a book and it was awesome. And I'd taken that year to just sort of be like every year, but really that first year, be inspired. I didn't have an agenda. I started Manifest 10K, which was money, 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 but I didn't have like this list of things, which was so funny because a lot of my friends who were business, they're like, oh, what are you going to get done? Like, what do you like? I'm like, I'm just going to take it easy and see what comes, And so it was the second year. And so I had changed it to Manifest 10K, and the offer that year, I believe this was the second year. I let people, it was total inspiration. I let people, I said, if you want to just pay $97 and trust that you're going to manifest 10, like you can pay it now, for like 2 days. And so that was really fun because people were like, yeah, I know I'm going to manifest like at least $97. So I'm happy to pay that. And so, yeah, it came then when I was celebrating like, and it makes sense like that it was the second year because the first year was like, okay. And the second year is kind of like, oh, this is real. Like this is 2 years out, this is who I am now.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I didn't give you this. This is kind of just came to me. I was inspired. Yeah. You mentioned that the first year you didn't have an agenda. Mm-mm. Do you remember how that felt to not have an agenda or a to-do list?
It felt amazing. And for me, I really quickly, it wasn't a to-do list. I didn't have an agenda, but I kind of quickly got an agenda because it was about, so my last day of work was November 1st. It was sometime around the end of December where it was like, I'm going to do Manifest 10K. I think I started writing it January 1st and then launched it like mid-February. So it felt really good and fun. That's right around the holidays, which was why I made the move at that time because I was like, oh, this is when I normally take time off anyway. So this is the perfect time. And it was great to just be able to be and wake up and do what I wanted. And it was awesome. Yeah. And then I think I had to work through, I'm trying to think whether this was the first year or the second year. There were moments I did have to have a talk with myself, like, you're working too hard. Like there's no need. You don't need this agenda, you know?
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Cassie Parks said, to herself, you don't have to work so hard. I love
Yeah.
that.
Because it was a habit.
Yeah,
It was the thing that my body, my brain, everything knew, like, oh, you should be working like all day. And yeah, there was a point I had to go, like, you don't have to do that.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So how has it shifted since you originally, and I'll put in quotes, retired?
Oh man, so much has shifted. Um, like just how has life shifted, or how do I
Yeah.
look at it?
Mhm. Yep.
I mean, I know where I'm going now. I think when I originally, it was really this leap of faith that if I step into this blank space, and it wasn't like a leap and the net will appear, because I had the net in place. And I like to make that very clear for people that for me, the net was important. So, because I don't necessarily believe in that quote, like leap and the net will appear. I had the
Mm.
net, which is what empowered me to be able to sit in that space and to not freak out and to go, okay, this is what's next. This is it. Um, and so what's different is then I was waiting isn't the right word, but I was allowing, what is this going to look like? What am I going to do? Because I left without even, I wasn't planning on being a money mindset coach when I left. And even after I wrote Money, Money, Money and launched that, I wasn't planning on that. It was a mentor that was like, this is already working. This is what people want to hear. Like, build on this. Don't go do 15 other things. 15 other courses, like, stick with this and make this. And so that was very valuable. But now I know, like we just talked in the last interview, I know that I'm coaching coaches. I know what's coming in the next 5 years. I don't know exactly how it's going to look, but I know what's happening. I have this deeper purpose, which I always knew I was meant to leave my job, and that was a purpose, but this is a different purpose.
Oh, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So do you, I didn't ask you this either, another inspiration. So you said that the leap of faith, and you already
Mm-hmm.
had the net.
Yeah.
So that first year or two, you said that you didn't really have a lot of fear about what was coming next?
No.
No.
Like what was coming next or
Mhm.
what to do?
So you trusted in that you had this net. I think a lot of people just they've heard that. I've heard that phrase,
Mm-hmm.
jump and the net will appear. So
Yeah.
what would you tell someone who wants to celebrate and have a freedomversary?
And wants to create their freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Create their freedom. And whether that is creating your freedom by talking to your partner and going, okay, I want to leave my job and I want to pursue this career. And can we make that work? And that's your net. Like, oh, we can pay the bills with this while I create this, right? That's the net. Or it is doing something, crazy, like taking what people might sound crazy. I don't think it's crazy. I've thought of lots of options of how people can do this. Like if they had equity in their house, and let's say they knew to pay their bills, they needed, $30,000. And they're like, I'm going to take that out and I'm going to trust and I'm going to build because I'm going to give myself that space. Or they take that out to supplement and do something else a little part-time so that they have the space. For me, it was creating real estate income. So I had enough to pay my bills. I wasn't making what I was making at my job, but I had enough to pay my bills. So that was always taken care of. I was never hit that place where I was stressed about that. And I believe that is so important. Can you create from that place? Yes. Is it harder? Absolutely. It is. So, and I had leapt without a net before, and it was terrible and it didn't work and it was
Hmm.
awful. And I was 19. So there was that, but I trusted. I was like, oh, if I just leave, this will happen. And it did not happen. And I gave up a lot of things that were working. And it all worked out in the end, of course, but it didn't feel good. And I wasn't going to do that again. So be open to being really clear. Step one of that is figuring out what your monthly investments are. Some people call those bills, they call them investments. What are the things I have to pay for in order to live, including food? including a little bit of fun, right? It doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't, because we can put things off. Like if I had to do it and I didn't get to travel I had planned, so I knew I had money for that. But if I did, had to put off traveling for 2 years to build a business, I could do it because it's never a sacrifice for me. When I know where I'm going, nothing's a sacrifice. Everything is in alignment, right? And so I didn't put off, because my bills that I could pay included traveling. But what I had done was I very consciously started investing in my happiness a couple years before this. That was part of the process. And I was living off of I think it was $22,000 a month. 10,000 of that was my rent. Right. And so I was happily living off of $1,000 a month. And this was 8 years ago. So things are a little bit higher now, but I was happy. I was doing some fancy dinners with my friends. I was traveling to see friends. I was creating and living the life that I wanted. I lived where I wanted to live. I had my dream car, which is my Jeep at that time still. And I was living that life because I learned to invest in my happiness. It took a lot less money, right? But I had that money,
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's good stuff right there.
You're welcome.
Okay, so does it look like what you thought it would?
I didn't have a vision when I left my job. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Oh, that's it. You didn't have a vision.
Because that was the place I was going. And so when I walked out, like I really did have a blank page. I'd created what I wanted to create. I was free. I had a choice whether I wanted to go to work or not. And so then it was creating new vision. So I literally did not have a vision of what it was going to look like. I knew it would be fun. I knew I'd change some people's lives. I knew I would love what I did. I knew I would travel a lot. I knew, I'd still take like my walks. I love getting up, walking in the morning, I knew all of that would stay the same. But I didn't have a vision for what it would look like. Yeah.
I love that. A blank page.
Yeah.
So, how is it even better? Like, you didn't have a vision. Now you do.
Yeah.
So how's it even better?
It's better in so many ways. And I will say, I was inspired when I was going through the work that we talked about last time. I'm in the steps, and I was doing that work, and I was inspired to go add up, how much money have I made in my business? How much money has my business brought in 8 years versus 8 years at my job? It was unconscious until I did this work, thought, or maybe I knew that I thought it, but I didn't think it mattered, or that it was a story, just like we talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
That when I left my job, I would never make as much, and that was okay. And in that moment, it was the right thing to be okay with that, right? Because when I was walking away from a 6-figure business to live off of 24,000, or a 6-figure job to live off of $24,000 a year, it had to be okay. Like, okay, it's okay if that never happens because I don't have a path there, right?
Right.
And when I added it up, I've made about 1.5 times in the 8 years of my business that I did at my job. So I started, when I started my job for $12 an hour and went through all of my raises and did my best calculations. And I was like, I've already made more than I made at my job. And I know it's continuing to grow. And so that's how it's even better. I was okay. And I believe in that moment, it was a good thing that life might not look like that, or the money might not be the same. Right. And when I added out, I was like, oh, and I already know that I'm on a path to making tons more money in my business. I can see it. I know the numbers. I know how they're working out, but there was just something that clicked in that, like, oh, that already happened. I don't have to get there. It's already happening. So I think that is one way that it's even better. I didn't know if that was possible. I didn't worry about whether it was possible or not. It didn't matter, because what mattered was my freedom, right? I was willing to live a less expensive life for my freedom. There was no price on that. And so, yeah, it's better because it's just more than I ever thought possible.
And I love that you just looked at your numbers.
Yeah, I know. I look at numbers all the time, right? I was like, how have I never added this up before? How have I never
Yeah.
thought to like add all these things up? But that's what's so, when we talk about the work works, like that wasn't an action. It was I was creating an assignment because the steps, they evolve a little bit because they're different because you guys are, and so I follow the same process I always do when I'm writing something. And I'm like, okay, this is not the same as it was in, year 2 of the steps. I'm like, what goes here? And it was something about like, looking for evidence, belief amping the story you want. And I said, all right, I'm going to put this down and I'm going to let it come to me. And then all of a sudden, like 2 days later, I was inspired and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And so the work guides us, right? There doesn't have to be the exact do this, do this. It's what we allow to be inspired when we open for the answer.
And
yeah, I was equally as shocked. Of course
it's more.
Right? Of course it's more. And it was the perfect time for it, to see that and to really step into that. And for me, it was, I can't believe I've never done it before, but I've done it in different ways, right? Like I had done it by hour before, like, I used to, take my salary and divide it by like 50 hours a week. And I've done it by hour, but I had never done it in that way. So that was really fun.
That's so fun, especially coming, being on the other side of the interview, seeing that you've had this aha of like looking at something. The system works. It's amazing.
It is.
And I think you've touched on this, but I'm going to ask, again, how does it feel to be celebrating 8 years of freedom?
Amazing. There's something different about 8. Like 7 was fun. But like, there's something about this year, and I don't know if it has to just do with the natural evolution or that 8 stands for infinity or whatever it is, but it's so certain. Like, I don't think I questioned it in the past every year. I wasn't like, oh, thank God I made it another year. Like never like that. But it's like, oh, I'm very close to 10 years. Like, and I think part of what it is that next year I was at my job for 9 years. So 8 years is the amount I was like technically an employee because I was contract for a year. So I think it's that, like I've matched that time of being an employee, and next year it will be the total time that I had that job, which is the longest I'd ever been at a job. And so I think just those milestones, when they match times, they lock things in for us on a deeper level.
Yeah. I like that too. It's 8 being the infinity. That's really cool. Okay. So I asked this question in our last interview, but how or what is your future self doing 5 years from now when she's celebrating 13 years of her freedom?
Oh man. She's, so I said, I'd sit in my bed and watch The Office, and it's a picture of that. And I do believe that's true. In fact, I'm probably going to put on my calendar just to remind myself that's the picture I said I was going to take. Because it's that picture represents so much. One of my intentions when I did really start to gain traction in my business is I wanted to make $500,000 from my bed and my balcony. I've already done that. Now I want to do it in a year, but I've already checked that box. Right. And so, and that was the intention that time. If you haven't heard the studio or heard the story or knew, I was living in my studio apartment in downtown Denver. And so my bed was in front of this amazing window and I could see the mountains, and I love to work from there. And so, and it also represented like hotel rooms and travel and working. And I also worked on my balcony. So, but it's my bed. And then, the first 2 weeks when I left my job, I just watched The Office, like literally. And I told my friend, like, should I be concerned? She's like, let's give it 2 weeks. But I so needed to decompress that was just like, I just kind of got up, had some coffee and started and just let myself be in the moment of where I needed to be instead of push. And then when that time had fully passed, this connects to everything we talk about feeling the feelings. When that moment had passed, I got up and I was like, oh, this is what I need to do next. This is what I need to do next. And I just started randomly writing and doing things until when they felt good, until I was inspired, to write Manifest 10K or Money, Money, Money. And so that is what I will be doing 13 years, I think, is just
honoring, wait to see the picture.
Honoring that space, my amazing bed, and maybe it'll be my bed at home, or maybe it'll be a travel bed, but maybe it'll be in the Airbnb in our place. But it will represent this amazing circle, but also the continuation of that circle and the expansion of it.
That's so fun. And this is new, inspired. So
yeah,
you, we do a lot of celebrating. And so what are you going to do to celebrate 8 years? You have a party planned, or
you know what, this year
specific?
This year, I actually scheduled a lot of podcasts. Not a lot. I think there's like 2. Normally I wouldn't work. But this year, what felt good was to share that story and to share on some money podcasts about my journey in that. And so there's that. I feel like there's one other thing, like we might have, I think also going to the Botanic Gardens is that night. And so it's interesting. This year it was it was conscious, but not as conscious, right? I said, when something would come, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great way to celebrate that. Oh yeah, of course I'm going to take that interview on that day. Of course, I have interviews on the 1st and the 2nd, which is going to be fun. And so, yeah, just doing all those fun things. And I'm also, there's something that launches for business that's very fun and I love to work on, and it's creative and it comes out every month on the 1st. And I'm also going to do that. Oh, and I am also going to help you all write your books, which feels like the perfect way to celebrate my Freedomversary, because we're really going to get to tell your stories and open up to new people, and I get to coach you in that. And so it feels like the perfect way to celebrate all week long.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's a week celebration, of course. And I love that you started writing a book, Money, Money, Money.
Yeah.
And then you're going to guide your coaches to do that. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to share about Freedomversary?
I think that's all. I'm excited to share next year. I mean, normally I have an offer or I do something, and I think that's actually maybe when you bought your 10-day pass. I don't know, but there's no offer, because this is kind of it. Like, this is the way it's going to be. If you want to join us when you're ready to start and it's time, like, you can jump in and you can start Manifest 10K, Pay After You Manifest, with one of my coaches. And that's for the foreseeable future. What I do see for certain is that we will let people get started and pay us after you manifest, because we want you to have success. Like, that's almost my Freedomversary gift, going forward, for as long as I can see, is that you can jump in and you can pay us after you manifest, and you can get coaching, and you can get to the point where you can do this and you can create the life you want, whether it's to have a Freedomversary or to have a farm or a beach house or whatever that is. You can start working with us and gain the confidence that we can help you get there. And then you can say yes to 5 years and we can really get the ball rolling.
Well, thank you so much for today, Cassie, and happy Freedomversary. I know that I'm going to celebrate it because it led me to you and your great system.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you for interviewing me, Kimberly. Remember, Kimberly can be your coach starting January 1st. You can sign up for that now. Go to payafteryoumanifest.com. And if you're ready to jump into Manifest 10K, you don't want to wait to then, you can always pay up front and work with me. Go to manifest10k.com. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining us on the Law of Attraction, Manifesting Success Stories show. To learn how to identify your current money story, go to identifyyourmoneystory.com.